You feel warm right now. Maybe you don't notice it, but you feel it. Somewhere on your wall, the darkest survival methods used by ancient humans during winter. You know that feeling when your heating breaks down in January? That mild panic, the frantic texting of a repairman, the uncomfortable few hours where the house just refuses to warm up no matter what you do. That feeling, that low-level dread, is probably the closest most of us will ever get to understanding what winter actually meant for the humans who came before us. And they didn't have a repairman coming. They had their hands, their community, whatever they could find around them, and an absolute refusal to die. This is the story of how they pulled it off. And some of what they had to do is far darker than you might expect. Strip away central heating. Strip away insulated walls, supermarkets, Gore-Tex jackets. Strip away every layer of protection modern life has quietly stacked between you and the elements. Now stand at the edge of winter in Ice Age Europe, or in Siberia 30,000 years ago, or on the high steppes when temperatures dropped to -40. The human body, left to its own devices, is spectacularly bad at handling this. We evolved on the African savanna, warm, dry, predictable. We have almost no fur. Our skin offers next to nothing by way of thermal insulation. Hyperthermia can begin setting in within hours of exposure at freezing temperatures. Your fingers stop working before you even realize it's happening. Your thoughts slow down. And eventually your body starts shutting down non-essential systems to protect your core, a process that, left unchecked, ends in one direction only. By every biological metric, we are among the worst designed large mammals on Earth for surviving extreme cold. And yet, we didn't just survive it, we walked directly into it. We crossed mountain ranges, pushed into tundra, hunted in blizzards, kept our children alive in temperatures that should have finished us off entirely. So what did that actually look like? And what did it cost? The first thing ancient people figured out, and this took a long time and enormous failure to develop, was that staying warm was not a passive thing. It was an active, daily, relentless project. Fire was the obvious tool, and fire mattered more than almost anything else. But fire has a problem people rarely think about. It heats the side of you facing it. The moment you turn around, the cold rushes back. The moment you step away to gather more wood, you are back in the killing air. Fire was essential, but it was never enough alone. What changed everything was sewn clothing. Not the draped fur over the shoulder version people imagine. A hide tossed loosely over your back is better than nothing, but only just. Wind slips in at the sides. The cold finds every gap. The real leap was cutting hides into sections and stitching them back into shapes built to match the human body. Fitted sleeves, closed seams, a garment that sealed a pocket of warm air right against the skin and held it there while you moved. To make this work, you need a needle. Not a crude, sharp stick, an actual needle with an eye, a tiny hole bored through bone that has been ground to a fine point. Researchers have found bone needles like this dating back more than 40,000 years. These are precise, deliberate tools made by people who understood exactly what they were for. The thread came from the animal too. Sinew, the tough fiber connecting muscle to bone, pulled free, dried, split fine, and used to stitch seams that actually held. Layer that garment with fur facing inward toward the skin, and a person could stand in killing cold and remain warm inside something they built themselves. Without that needle, there is no human population surviving an Ice Age winter north of the Mediterranean. The needle is not a footnote. It is one of the most important inventions our species ever produced. But now you are warm enough to move. The light is fading. The temperature is still dropping, and you need somewhere to survive the night. Caves helped. They hold steady temperatures and break the wind. But here is what gets glossed over. A good cave in a useful location was rare. And if you found one, something else probably already lived in it. Most of the time, you could not rely on a cave. You had to build. At a site in modern Ukraine called Mezherich, archaeologists found structures built roughly 15,000 years ago. The surrounding landscape had almost no timber, almost no stone. So the people there built with the only raw material available in massive supply, mammoth bones. Hundreds of them, per structure. Jawbones stacked like shingles, enormous curved tusks arched overhead. The remains of somewhere between 95 and 149 individual mammoths went into just 4 huts at that single site. These were not desperate improvised shelters. They were engineered constructions, planned and assembled by people who understood load-bearing geometry well enough to build structures that held through multiple seasons. Inside, the walls got sealed. Hides stretched over gaps, turf cut and stacked against the exterior. Sometimes snow itself was packed around the outside, because a thick layer of snow traps pockets of air, and trapped air holds heat. Winter's own weapon turned against itself. Warmth costs fuel. Fuel means someone has to keep going back outside for more, which means the food required to keep everyone alive had to already be there, stored and waiting. And this is where it gets truly dark. In winter, the land stops producing. Plants die back, berries vanish, roots lock away under frozen ground. Animals are lean, scarce, or gone entirely. For a hunter-gatherer group, winter is the season when the earth itself quits feeding you, and it does it fast. Autumn was not a relaxed season. It was a desperate race. Ancient people became sophisticated preservers of food long before any modern technology existed. Meat got sliced thin and dried, either in sunlight during good stretches or slowly over smoke. Pulling moisture out stops bacterial growth. A rack of drying meat was a life insurance policy for the months ahead. Cold itself became a tool. Groups living above the permafrost line would dig pits down into ground that stayed frozen year-round and pack them with meat from a large kill. The cold that was trying to starve them would instead preserve what kept them alive. A grim reversal. Winter turned against itself. But the single most critical thing stored was not meat. It was fat. This does not sound dramatic until you understand the biology. When your body burns enormous energy just to maintain its core temperature, lean protein alone will not keep you going. Fat is the densest energy source available to the human body, more than double the calories per gram of either protein or carbohydrate. In deep winter, fat was worth more than almost anything else. Ancient people rendered animal fat down into a shelf-stable substance and combined it with dried meat into a dense, portable, calorie-packed ration. Some indigenous groups in the Arctic continued making versions of this well into modern recorded history, and the ratio of fat to lean they used was extremely precise, not based on nutrition science, but on generations of watching what kept people alive and what slowly killed them. Getting that balance wrong was a quiet death. Too much lean protein relative to fat in a starvation context causes what is sometimes called rabbit starvation. You eat and your body still wastes away because it cannot process the protein without the fat required to metabolize it. Ancient people did not know the biochemistry, but they knew the pattern. They had watched it happen, and they adjusted. So, you have survived the cold, you have built your shelter, you have stored enough to eat. 3 of winter's threats beaten. The 4th one comes after dark, and it does not leave bones behind. In high latitudes during winter, usable daylight can shrink to 5 or 6 hours. The rest, 15, 16 hours, is cold darkness. You cannot hunt effectively. You cannot travel safely. You are confined to a small space with the same small group, night after night, for months. Modern research on isolation and confinement is clear. This kind of situation grinds people down. Small tensions that would normally dissolve outdoors get sealed in together and fester. Depression rates in high-latitude winter communities remain measurably higher even today, with artificial light and every form of entertainment imaginable. For ancient humans, the long dark was a genuine psychological threat, and the way they answered it is one of the most important things about us as a species. They filled the darkness with each other. Around the winter fire, in the hours when nothing else could be done, people talked. They repaired tools. They carved. They stitched clothing for the coming season. Every task that did not require daylight got done in those hours. The long night was a workshop. But it was more than that. It was a classroom, a library without walls. This was when elders passed knowledge to children, when the stories of the group got told and retold, when understanding of how to read weather, how to track animals, which plants healed and which killed, all of it moved from one generation to the next in the only format available, spoken aloud, in firelight, in the dark. Researcher Polly Wiesner published a study in 2014 examining conversations among the Jew/Hawansi people of the Kalahari. She found that daytime talk was mostly practical, food, resources, plans. But after dark, around fires, the conversation shifted. Stories, laughter, moral questions, shared memory. Firelight changed what people were willing to say to each other. The long winter nights were not dead time. They were the incubator for something that defines us entirely, the capacity to pass lived knowledge across generations through language. A massive portion of what we call human culture was born exactly there, in the dark, in the cold, pressed together for warmth, telling each other what they knew. When you look at the whole picture, something becomes clear. Winter did not just test our ancestors, it built them. The cold pushed them to invent sewn clothing. The scarcity of shelter pushed them to develop real architecture. The seasonal gap in food pushed them to develop preservation techniques that allowed calories to be stored and carried across months. And the long dark nights pushed them toward language and the transfer of accumulated knowledge, which is the foundation of every human civilization that has ever existed. Every harsh season was a recurring exam. And every group that made it to spring added what they learned to the shared body of knowledge passed down around the fire to the next generation. You are the result of that chain. Every person in your lineage made it through winter. Thousands of winters, across hundreds of thousands of years. They figured out, one brutal season at a time, exactly what it took, and they passed it forward. So the next time you flip that thermostat up, and the heat kicks on, and the room settles into warmth while snow presses against the window outside, let it sit for just a second. Not guilt, not some performance of gratitude, just recognition. Someone, a very long time ago, looked at winter the same way you are looking at it now. The difference is they had to go out and meet it, and they did, every single time.